What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Deku story. What if Izuku was declared a traitor and took his revenge on his class and school? If you enjoyed then please like, share and do comments. Katsuki walked into the hallway of UA with his school uniform and his bag on his shoulder while looking through his phone without paying attention to where he was going. He continued to scroll his phone while looking through the text message he got later that night from Shitty Hair and from his parents, but he wasn't in the mood in replying right now because he was in a hurry to go to his class before he was late. He slides the door open and finds himself to be early without anyone in the class except for a few of his class, so he just walks over to his desk and finds an empty seat behind him while smiling in satisfaction. The ashen blonde kid put his feet on the desk while playing with his phone, but before he could look through the social media to distract his mind, the door slid open and Kirishima entered along with Shiro, Mina, and Kaminari, the self-proclaimed Baku squad. "Oh, Baku bro, you're early." Kirishima greets him, waving his hand. "Though you'll be late or something," Shiro added. "Get lost would you? I'm busy right now," Katsuki replied angrily. He looked at the two of them went to their own desk instead while Kaminari went to his desk and dozed off from the lack of sleep, and Mina was busy having a chat with Hagakure and Uraraka about her new dress that she bought online from Hokkaido. Katsuki internally rolled his eyes at their girly chat while trying to play with his phone when someone was shaking his shoulder, calling to him. Bakugo." He turned around and saw Shiro in front of him. "What do you want, soy sauce face?" Katsuki replied, clearly looking bothered for the second time. "Can I copy your homework, man? I totally forgot about it yesterday." Shiro begged. "Maybe you won't forget about it if you hadn't played an online game with Shitty Hair over there," Katsuki replied. "Come on Baku bro. We totally forgot about it. We promise that this will be the last time," Kirishima asked, joining with Shiro. "What is this I heard about copying someone's homework? It is truly unbecoming for an aspiring hero." Iida came in between, trying to reprimand both Kirishima and Shiro. "Come on Iida, we simply forgot about it. Can't you just simply let us go?" Shiro tries to excuse himself away. "Absolutely not. I'm sorry, but you have to face your punishment for not doing your homework. Your action after all has consequences." Iida lectured both of them. Katsuki is looking all pissed, gritting his teeth because they choose to argue with his desk. He was about to shoot another profanity out of his mouth when suddenly the door is opened and Aizawa-sensei enters the room looking all tired like always. "All right, head to your seat, class is about to begin," Aizawa replied, "and lower your feet, Bakugo." Katsuki clicked his tongue before he fixed his seat back and everyone returned to their respective seat. Kirishima and Shiro also returned to their seat. "All right, we're about to start today's class, so." Ding! Asterisk. Aizawa is about to begin the class when suddenly a phone rings in the middle of the class. "All right, whose phone is that?" He looks annoyed that someone didn't turn off their phone. Katsuki grunts knowing that it belongs to him since he forgot to switch it to silent mode because the extras in his class are bothering him all day. He was just about to fish the phone out of his pocket when suddenly he heard a ringing sound from behind, this time belonged to a purple midget. Then another is ringing, but this time it's on Iida's seat. Now this is a surprise since he thought of all people, Four Eyes would have always set his phone on a goddamn silent mode, but to think he would forget about it is such a surprise. Then one more, but this time is on Round Cheek's desk. Then ears. Then Birdbrain. Then Big Lips. Then Shitty Hair. Even the hobo gets one. All of the phones in the class start to ring, which raises a question, and Aizawa decides to open his own phone to check on the message, wondering what is all about. It took less than 10 seconds to see his face turning from annoyance to a dreaded look as he began to put his phone back in his pocket and rushed to the door. "Class is on hold, I will send someone to replace me. Don't cause any ruckus and everyone stays here. Iida, you're in charge while I'm gone," Aizawa replied before hurrying to leave, and no one opens their phone. Soon everyone began to wonder what kind of news could scare off their teacher and turned into a helicopter mom mode like that. Out of curiosity, Hagakure decided to pry into her phone, wondering if the news that everyone received was the one that scared off their teacher. But when she opened her phone, she suddenly yelped in surprise, but her tone sounded with fear. "Toru, what's wrong?" Mina immediately went over to her side as the invisible girl quickly tossed her phone on the floor. Mina tried to grab her phone, but Iida was much quicker and he took Hagakure's phone, Aizawa-sensei had told us, no one is supposed to look at the news, we can't disobey our teacher's order. You do realize that any one of us can just look at our phone and see for it ourselves, right? Shoto points out while his hand went to his pocket. The others follow as well, and Iida is left standing in the middle of the classroom, knowing that he can't stop over 17 hands grabbing to each of their phone. But once they opened their phone to see the news, all of them had the same mixture of emotions as Aizawa-sensei and Hagakure did with the girls, but one thing for sure, everyone had the word fear painted in their expression. Tartarus prison break, prisoner escape. It was a news report about a fugitive escape from prison, but what caught everyone's surprise was not the news that a villain was escaping or on the loose in the city, but the picture that's on the front headline of the news itself. It was Izuku Midoriya's picture. Yaoyorozu, who had a tablet in her bag, decided to watch the news as everyone was circling her table, including Katsuki, who tried to listen to the newscaster announcing the news about the breakout. Hello, Musudafu citizens. This is Ito Harumi from Channel 7 News, where we bring you everything you need to know so you can be safe, around the clock. She announces while wearing professional attire with a gray blouse. Now we announce about a certain villain that has escaped from a high-security prison. No one is quite sure who it is, but is speculated to be the former UA student, Izuku Midoriya. A picture is shown of him, everyone tenses at her words, looking around at each other. The infamous student of Class 1A who made his name at sports festival fighting against the son of the number 2 hero, Endeavor, Shoto Todoroki, who managed to wow few of the spectators with his feat. The newscaster announced switching to the footage where Izuku and Todoroki are fighting at the sports festival. Izuku Midoriya is suspected to be the UA traitor after Principal Nezu, the headmaster of UA school, along with the school faculty, had suspected him after two villain attack that hits the school, and he's being sent to prison 7 months ago. Izuku Midoriya was suspected of escaping the Tartarus prison yesterday night by placing an explosive inside the prison and creating a hole inside of his cell. The scene changed to a picture of a giant hole in the side of a maximum security prison where many violent villains were held. Tartarus head jailer hasn't given any statement regarding the escaped prisoner, but an anonymous source said that there is no sign of corpse inside of his cell, leading to believe that Izuku Midoriya had indeed escaped. Everyone didn't bother to continue to listen through at the end of the news as they all felt like they heard more than enough. Mina and Jiro put their hand on their mouth trying to prevent themselves from vomiting. Aoyama, Kota, Ojiro, and Tokiyami all held a pensive look, not saying a word. But the ones who held the most shock were the students who were on the front view of the news itself. Uraraka, Shoto, Iida, and Tsuyu all held a horrified look on their faces, and the bubbly girl's face was as white as a sheet. Kirishima, Shiro, Kaminari, and Toru watched with widened eyes as they were unable to believe it. But the one who seemed to look in the most shock was Katsuki himself, as his forehead started to sweat and his eyes were bulging the size of a plate while continuing to be the only one that was left to watch. You guys. Is that really him? No way. I'm calling Mr. Aizawa, Iida says, pulling out his phone with shaky hands. The line rings for a moment before he answers, but Katsuki is too entranced by the screen. That was the last news we've heard of Izuku Midoriya's latest prison break until today. We will hope to get UA's thoughts and clarifications on this issue. Now in other news. He was in Tartarus, right? How did he escape? Everyone calm down. Everyone was starting to panic slightly. The noise from the talking and the screeching rattled in his head. The words, escaped, and Deku, were bouncing around, and all he could say was, Deku. ... Izuku is hiding behind the wall of an abandoned alley while still wearing his gray prison jumper. The street is littered with police cars patrolling around the area, and he can see that his picture has been on a poster spread all over the city, presumably the social media as well. He tried to catch his breath while his face and clothes were still wet from swimming to the city and hiding under a truck from the dock warehouse before it parked in the city, and he managed to come out before the driver took notice. Right now, he's pretty low on provision. No clothes, no food, no places to stay, and no quirk. If the cops are worse, a pro hero, found him, then he would stood no chance while still exhausted like the way he is right now. He needs to find a place to lay low, and that's when he spotted a back door leading to a shop. He grabbed a busted pipe on the floor and pried the locks open. The lock was quickly busted and he entered before anyone could spot him. He enters and finds himself in a dark room with no source of light while trying to grab anything on the wall that feels like a switch. He flicked it and found himself in some sort of gun store. There were all kinds of weapons he could find hanging on the wall, waiting to get picked up. From a simple hunting knife to a sniper rifle used by the hunter, all hanging on display. Camp emergency provisions, food and drinks, clothes. Izuku only had one thing to say. Jackpot. Aizawa came rushing to the teacher's office faster than any time he'd ever been there, running as he had never done except when he learned that Izuku Midoriya declared a traitor in the first place 7 months ago. He assumed that Mike and Midnight were at the office or their class and came running as well, and everyone was currently gathered at their discussing of matter at hand. He had no idea what to think right now. Thousands of thoughts run through his mind but all lead to one single question. Is it true? Of course, at the time, Aizawa was among the teachers who believed that the kid was truly the traitor. The level of analysis and intelligence that he shows in that notebook is accurate. Scary accurate. How he found a way to neutralize Bakugo's quirk, disabling Iida in less than 5 seconds, and cornering Todoroki by using psychological attack and manipulation. And not just his students, but also Pro Heroes itself. Endeavor, Death Arms, MT. Lady, Ectoplasm, Mike, even him. At the time of course he was positive about the information at hand. He truly was the traitor, and by his way of acting in class, trying not to stand out and keeping himself hidden from others to notice, he was already sure that he found the culprit, and he could look at his class and told them face to face that the traitor had been apprehended. He finally entered the teacher's office and found everyone standing there with the same distraught look on their faces. Even All Might was also there with his lanky features and bony skeleton face looking all distraught. Is it true? Aizawa asked his colleague about the news. I'm afraid it's true, Aizawa. A voice came from his back and he turned to see Principal Nezu standing behind him. Izuku Midoriya indeed escaped from the Tartarus facility yesterday at midnight. Nezu confirmed the story, thus finalizing the question on everyone's mind. Everyone kept their silence in check, trying to process the truth regarding the news that had happened. Some of them refused to admit it, but seeing the explosion that's happened on the Tartarus wall is enough proof they needed to confirm their story. So what now? Vlad decided to ask, wondering what to do with the situation. For now, the police require our full assistance to capture him back to Tartarus. All of Izuku Midoriya's files during his time at school, the police needed them to build a profile case. Nezu informed Aizawa. Detective Tsukauchi is in presence. Aizawa asked if the detective was assigned to this case. Unfortunately, Detective Tsukauchi has still handling a high-profile case in America for about a year now, so a different detective will take over the case for now until he comes back, Nezu informed. And what about Class A? How did they handle the news? Toshinori chose to ask. Aizawa rubbed the back of his head. To be honest, I've no idea what happened. After I saw the news, I just came rushing to this place and told them to keep their phone out, but knowing them I suspect 1 or 2 students will disobey that order. I want to ask something. Midnight raised her hand, gaining the attention of the other faculty. I know that regarding Izuku Midoriya, imprisonment is rather unfair at the time. She replied bitterly, but are we all certain that he truly is the traitor? The other teacher looks around, uncomfortable, bringing the topic back at hand. Aizawa is the first to answer. Nimori, we talked about this before. Izuku Midoriya's notes are just too detailed for us to be missing the fact that he truly is the traitor. You saw what he was writing over there, how to disable someone's quirk. Students, teachers, even pro heroes. I know that during the time we voted, I was outvoted along with Snipe, but we sent that kid for 7 months in prison while we waited for Detective Tsukauchi to come, even though we insisted that he quickly return from his case in America. But what pisses me off is the fact that the source of that evidence is somewhat lackluster in my opinion. Nimori, my class is confident at the time. That's why when Uraraka and Iida handed me that notebook before, I made sure that they were to keep an eye on him. To observe his behavior and find anything suspicious. And why can't you do that at the time and choose to send your students instead? Nimori questioned. Midoriya is always keeping his distance from everyone, including the teacher, except for All Might, but I don't want to alarm him of finding out that we might suspect him. It's better to have 19 pairs of eyes around him that he knows than 1 pair of eyes that he always acts so skittish around. You mean you keep your distance? Midnight corrected, causing Aizawa to tense. Don't bullshit me, Shota. We all knew that you barely put any effort into the kid's progress from the start and always gunning at him since he was being favored by All Might from the beginning. Nimari pointed out, not hiding any scrape of truth, causing All Might to tense by the accusation of Midoriya having some personal connection to him. The kid always acts like the victim. Oh, that's bullcrap, Shota, and we all knew about it. We kept our silence for over 3 years, but you can't just keep assuming that you were in the right and not counting the other matter. And what matter is that? How about for the fact that you always favored the other kid in your class, like Bakugo, because of how talented he was in your eyes? Or perhaps you tried to outsource from others like Shinso and insist on him take Midoriya's seat, and the only reason why he's not sitting in your class like you dreamed of is because of Midoriya case remains unsolved to this day. Okay, I think you made your point, Nem, Mike said, trying to calm her. Or how about for the fact that the only reason we send the boy to prison in the first place is because of the word of a 15-year-old kid who happened to have an unknown vendetta with him since the first day and happens to report it to the teacher who had the same vendetta as that boy. Bakugo and Midoriya were rivals. On what planet? On what universe, if I may ask? Midnight exploded and went to Aizawa's space and jabbed her finger at his chest. I repeatedly told you to check to their file, but you simply just tossed that to your desk and left it covered in dust worth of 7 months, and judge with you own 2 pair of eyes instead, which isn't working pretty well if you ask me. Nimari, I think that's enough out of you, Nezu said in a firm and authoritative tone, silencing them of their argument. Nimari didn't even realize that she was standing before she took her seat. I know that you find the sentence to be unfair, but we only took necessary precautions at that time. We suffered from 2 major villain attacks and a student was kidnapped by the same group of villains who were responsible for the first attack of the year. And despite what happened, all of the evidence points to Izuku Midoriya being the traitor. Nezu told her about his decision at the time. Right now, I need you all to head to your respective class and calm the situation. The last thing we needed is to have a ruckus even among the school. Nezu then dismisses the group of teachers to get back, but not before Nimari throws a glare at Shota's direction. The remaining of class A were still at their desk trying to process the news that had just happened. None of them were talking to each other or having any set of conversations, trying to stew the information in their head. Uraraka, Iida, Tsuyu, and Shoto all looked horrified while lowering their heads and staring at the desk. Kaminari was looking all panicked and looking to his left and right in an accusation manner with Shiro and Kirishima. Katsuki grits his teeth in rage like his usual self, but finds that his expression is a mixture of rage and fear. They all remembered what happened on that day. The day that they send one of their own to his demise. Flashback start. What do you guys think of Deku? Uraraka asked out of a sudden while everyone was gathered in the living room except for Izuku in the area. Everyone suddenly stopped their activity and joined in the conversation about a certain classmate of theirs. Well, to be honest with you all, I think he's a bit too much, Kirishima replied, rubbing the back of his head. And he likes to show off during practice. Trying to act all dramatic and everything. Mina commented. I know, right? And how he always acts all nice like that. It just sounds fake. Uraraka groaned. The nerd always acts like that from the beginning. Always begging for attention since middle school. Can't even take a hit if you ask me. Katsuki replied while grunting. At first he always put on an act with his weak persona, now he's all come out looking like he's all powerful like that. I meant, what is his game there? Toru went on talking about it. And what was that with him always trying to be helpful to others? Does he think that people are gonna be friends with him? But you had to admit that his notebook pretty much helped us right from the start, Momo replied. If you ask me, that's all he worth, Kaminari said, not caring about it. But his behavior always seems to hinder our class progress. Some of the other class talks about us because he tends to butt into other people's business. Iida began to lecture. Just wish that he's gone if you asked me, Mina said under her breath but loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone then stopped with the conversation while staying at their seat, not doing anything before they heard someone talking. But what if we can? They all turned to see Bakugo smirks with his usual look, smiling, thinking that he had a great idea blooming in his mind. What if we can get rid of that nerd from this school once and for all? Katsuki suggested. What, you want him to get expelled or something? Kaminari asked, not following the flow of this conversation. I'm not talking about expelled. I'm talking about out of the picture for good, he spoke, his voice sounding sure with the idea itself. What are you talking about? Tokiyami looks over. That notebook of his. What if we can prove that he's using that to leak information to those villains? Katsuki said. You meant that notebook he always carries around with. Uraraka remembers that notebook that he always carries around. So we framed him. Shoto asked almost like he could read Bakugo's mind. That notebook is filled with tons of information about us. Our quirks, support items, weaknesses, how to counter against them, everything is in there. It's got more than enough to prove that he's feeding information to the League of Villains. He began to explain his plans. But how do we do that? We can't just show the teachers that he's doing that, there would be no proof that he did that. Jiro points out, noticing the flaw in their plan. We already have that. I overheard the teacher talking after we finished with the summer camp. Mike-sensei suspected that there might be a traitor in the school after 2 recent villain attacks, Toru says, remembering the conversation she overheard that day. That's perfect, we can use that to sway the teacher to believe us. Uraraka claps her hands, smiling in delight. Katsuki ends his explanation with a sinister smirk on his face. So, what do you say? You're all in it. Flashback end. And so they did go on with the plan. They managed to frame him that day. Building up rumors by slowly causing disturbance unknown by the other teachers, telling them that Deku is acting all suspiciously and pointing out his notebook with tons of information about the heroes. And they did it. The teacher looks up to their fake story and takes Deku out one day and ends up arresting him for the whole school to see if it happens, as he is being led to an armored police truck with cameras and reporters demanding an explanation. Katsuki and the others were smirking during that day, watching his shocked face as Deku was finally gone for good from the class. He almost wanted to take pictures of him when he was being taken. They were celebrating happily at the time, partying at the dorms how they managed to send that waste of space from the school. As a bonus, Katsuki and Uraraka were dating straight away after he was sent to prison. All Might also has a talk with him and offers his quirk to him, and what makes him happy is the fact that the same quirk also belongs to Deku. For the past 7 months, they have been living happily and Deku-free, enjoying school life. But now, Deku is escaping from prison and he's coming to them. And not just any prison, but Tartarus itself, where they would store the most dangerous prisoner from Stain to All for One. What spooks them is the fact that Deku is free and might blab about their little plan to send him to prison. After all, he saw their delighted expression after having his ass being sent into that truck. If Deku decides to talk about their plan, then most likely they will be questioned by the teachers or worse the police, and they will all end up getting kicked out from UA. All they could do at this time was for the pros and the police to catch him. Should be easy because the freak is quirkless right now and has no skill to survive without any quirk. Katsuki gave about a week before they heard the news that Deku was already being apprehended. And once he got his ass captured, he would make sure that Deku would never speak any of their plans to anyone. Detective Tsukauchi is just landing in Japan after his 15 long hours of flight, and even though he just finished landing at the Musudafu airport, he didn't head back to his apartment for a shower or even bother to buy a takeout meal at the airport, and instead rushing straight to UA ordering a taxi to take him there. He was just being briefed by his assistant a few hours before he was supposed to take off, saying that Izuku Midoriya from UA Hero Course Class A was escaping from Tartarus prison for leaking sensitive information to the League of Villains. Tsukauchi had to ask his assistant to repeat the news for a 3rd time, making sure that he heard it correctly. Izuku Midoriya. As in Izuku Midoriya, the boy that Toshinori told that inherited All Might quirk. The same boy who competed in the sports festival, who impressed a lot of people. There's tons of missing information that's still gaping. What makes them so sure that the boy is truly the traitor, and why? And more importantly, why is no one bothered to inform him that the boy is being sent to Tartarus instead of a regular prison? Tsukauchi quickly paid the cab driver, came out, walked inside UA, and told the receptionist that Detective Tsukauchi was present and wanted to see Principal Nezu urgently, flashing the receptionist his badge. Soon he was allowed to enter and immediately walked into the office, not bothered by a few glances from the students of the police detective who was just walking into the school during the lunch break, gaining a lot of attention. Tsukauchi quickly arrived and opened the door harshly, not paying attention to whoever was in there. Principal Nezu sits in his office with a calm demeanor, almost like he was expecting to see the detective to come. "Ah, detective, what can I do for you today?" Principal Nezu replied with a soothing tone, one that Tsukauchi found to be laced with condescending. "Cut the crap, would you? I want to know what happened to Izuku Midoriya while I was gone. And spare no detail cause I want to know your excuse for sending a 15-year-old kid to Tartarus prison." Tsukauchi barked out orders, not wanting to waste a second. "Well, it's just as you hear it. Izuku Midoriya is presumed to be a traitor for leaking information about our students and pro-heroes, including my staff." "On what evidence?" "The evidence lies in his notebook. Izuku Midoriya has at least information worth 10 years of analysis regarding a pro-hero's quirk. From the nature of it to how counters against it, I find the information to be scarily accurate in my opinion and so you decide to send the boy to Tartarus instead. How long has he been sitting there?" Tsukauchi asked since he was left unknown of his incarceration period. "About 7 months, Nezu answered. 7 months. Tsukauchi exploded in front of the principal, looking enraged. "You kept a boy inside of prison for 7 months based on a doodle notebook that was made by one of your students. Tsukauchi, need I remind you that there are students outside these doors? Why? You don't want them to hear about your latest accomplishment in keeping this school safe." Tsukauchi rants, not bothering to keep his formality in check. "You were able to stand and walking on this school like a proud peacock with feathers coming out of your ass, and yet you didn't have the time to call for me before you sent that kid into prison, which is by now is pointless since he already escaped. You were busy solving a case in America. One simple question from my mouth and this whole matter is over, but you decide to skip the formality and procedure and send him to prison because you don't want people to know what you did count as a legal arrest. We had solid evidence from a testimony from his classmate. Evidence can be forged and testimony can be a lie. Why do you think my quirk is around in Japan to begin with? You do realize that if Izuku Midoriya is indeed not the traitor, you would be sentencing that kid to a career suicide. You drag that kid good name through the mud because you let them cloud your judgment and make you jump the gun." Tsukauchi stops with his ranting and looks at the white mammal with much hatred and disdain leaking out from him, knowing that this kid has gone through a lot. The school is sending that kid to a prison without any law process under the excuse to keep the students safe, and yet they were willing to burn a single kid for that sacrifice. It's simply ridiculous. What about his quirk? What happened to One for All? Tsukauchi spoke after calming down. Toshinori took One for All out of the kid for safekeeping. We can't allow All for One to have access to that quirk, especially with the two of them in the same prison. So Toshinori has One for All. Not exactly. ... Katsuki is grunting while holding his right arm in pain after trying to use All Might's quirk for the 3rd time this month, and yet he still fails for who knows how many times this has gone to. He's holding onto his arm, compressing it with ice to soothe the pain, but he still has no explanation for why is the quirk rejecting him. All Might have explained to him before that to wield One for All, one must have a strong physique to able to withstand the power that was from the quirk itself. All Might sees the potential in Katsuki and that's why he offers him the quirk, but for some reason, he can't use the quirk like Deku was, and every time he tries to use it for the first time, it mangles his right arm, forcing him to stay at the hospital for a month. Katsuki went to All Might for some explanation as to why he couldn't use it, but the number one hero himself had no explanation for himself since he never had any problem wielding it, and to make matters worse, Deku can master it just fine. He's cursing under his breath, saying about how shitty this has gone to and how Deku can use this power, but somehow Katsuki didn't have an idea how to wield it. He even went on to ask for the freak notebook and it didn't even contain any sort of information to One for All at all, which angers Katsuki even more. Now he was all alone at the dorm sulking about his latest injury while sitting on the sofa before he heard the door creak open and the rest of the class entered, chatting after coming from the mall and hanging out. "We're back," Toru announced. "God, I'm so exhausted." Mineta pants in tired. "Come on dude, man up a little." Kaminari nudges over to his small figure while smirking. Katsuki would have shouted at them to keep things quiet, but because of his injury, he couldn't shout at the top of his lungs like always, unless he wanted to feel another set of pain in his arm. He noticed that some of them weren't back just yet and began to ask the closest to his, which is Glasses, "Hey Four Eyes, where the fuck is the rest of them?" They all went to get lunch. Uraraka, Tsuyu, and Yaoyorozu went to get lunch. Mina and Aoyama went to buy a new perfume. And Sato, Shoji, and Tokiyami are going to the arcade. Iida answered. Katsuki scoffs, whatever. Soon the others rejoined their conversation as they started to talk in the kitchen preparing for lunch, and some of them chose to head back to their room. Katsuki decides to spend his time working through his homework while teaching shitty hair and dunce face some math problems. It took about an hour and the rest of the class was already coming back. Sato's group was the first to come, and around 10 minutes later, Yaoyorozu's group was to come, and she took notice that someone was missing. "Where's Mina and Aoyama?" Yaoyorozu points out, putting her shopping bag on the floor. "I don't know, I thought they were with you," Shiro told her. "No, we didn't see them anywhere, we only saw them at the mall before we got separated." Momo shakes her head looking worried. "They must have on their way right now," Kaminari reassured her. "Yeah, you're probably right." Momo nods. "Oh, by the way, the delivery truck is about to come with your order. Kaminari, thought I would tell you." "Oh sweet, thanks. You're the best, Yaoyorozu." "What is she talking about?" Kaminari found a life-size model statue of an old hero who uses electricity just like his quirk. "And it was a bargain sale and he got it." Kirishima went on to explain. "Thought I would place that in my room for decoration." Kaminari smiles. "That sounds stupid," Katsuki spoke. "You just don't have a sense of taste." Kaminari playfully waved his hand. And just in time, the delivery truck informed Yaoyorozu that the truck had already arrived at the front gate of UA, and Kaminari had asked Sato and Shoji to help them move it. After Kaminari and the others have gone out, Aoyama arrives carrying 2 shopping bags in his hand consisting of expensive perfume and a new hand mirror, but what everyone takes notice of is the fact she's not coming home with a certain pink-haired girl. "Aoyama, where's Mina?" Suyu points out. "She's not with me, says she decided to head back to join you all," Aoyama replied. "Huh, that's weird, she didn't join us before. Maybe she got lost," Shoto replied. "She's not a child," Todoroki, Uraraka replied. While everyone is discussing Mina's whereabouts, Kaminari is carrying the huge crate box with both Sato and Shoji pushing the crate with the trolley. "Wow, you weren't kidding when you said it's life-size," Tokiyami replied, watching the crate as tall as Iida. "Can you help me with opening this thing?" Kaminari holds the crowbar in his hand. "Wouldn't it be better that you open this in your room?" Toru points out, looking at the size of the crate. "No way man, I wanna see it if they messed up with the shipment," Kaminari replied. So Kaminari had asked for Sato, Shiro, and Tokiyami to help open the crate while the others were worrying that Mina wasn't answering her phone. "She's not answering her phone." Momo checked her phone and found the number wasn't answering. "Maybe she got stuck in traffic or she's on the subway," Iida assured her. Everyone suddenly stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to Kaminari, who was on the floor wearing a horrified look on his face, along with Tokiyami and Shoji as well. Sato had to cover his mouth, stopping himself from vomiting at the gruesome scene in front of him. The group who wanted to see Kaminari's life-size figure also screamed and began to cry, dropped themselves to the floor, and some had to cover their faces to stop seeing. Iida, Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, Shoto, Katsuki, Kirishima, and Shiro all came rushing to check on what was going on, and they all had to close their mouth to stop vomiting, but all their eyes were fixated on the scene. In front of them is the life-size figure of a pre-Quirk era hero called Black Lightning, striking a heroic pose, but the statue itself is covered in blood from top to bottom, and blood is dripping to the floor of the crate. The walls inside of the crate are painted with blood. But what makes them scared is not the fact that the statue is dripping in red liquid. It's the head of the figure that's been replaced. Instead of the confident and powerful face of the hero itself, it's replaced with the class-resident pink girl's decapitated head with a message on the hero's chest written in blood. "Where is the rest of me?" To say whatever happened at UA 2 hours ago was a mess would be an understatement of a lifetime. The police line, along with 4 patrol cars parked right in the middle with 2 ambulances carrying a body under a tarp, and CSI analyzing the crate, is more than enough for the media to use for an ammo to sue UA for the next 15 years. Ishido's headless body is covered in a tarp and was being carried by ambulance for the police to check for any evidence left by the victim, but one thing for sure is that this was nothing but a message. The school itself is under heavy investigation, with Detective Tsukauchi leading the investigation, interviewing the students of Class A who were still shell-shocked by the recent departure of one of their classmates. The police also asked for the security tape of the school building and access entry to anyone who's entered the school in the last 72 hours for evidence. Tsukauchi is currently having a conversation with both Principal Nezu and the staff when suddenly, his assistant Sanza, a police officer with a cat feature, comes rushing with a brown envelope in his hand. "Detective, someone came to deliver this for you." Sanza handed the envelope to Tsukauchi but found it pretty heavy, unlike your usual paper envelope. "From who?" Tsukauchi asked since he didn't recognize the sender's name. "I don't know, sir, the sender said that it's from Itsuki Miryu," Sanza reported. Tsukauchi opens the envelope, takes out the content showing what appears to be a cell phone and places it on the table. Suddenly the phone starts to ring and the caller's name only shows to be a blocked number. Having no one to pick it up, Tsukauchi decides to volunteer and answer the call. "Hello," Tsukauchi answered. "Hello Detective Tsukauchi, how's America? Did you enjoy the change of scenery?" Tsukauchi glances around thinking that the caller is close or around the area. "Who is this? I thought you recognized the name. I write it down if I were you." Tsukauchi then quickly took the envelope and wrote down each letter before he started to rearrange them in his mind. Itsuki Miryu, that's a pretty unusual name if he was being honest. He tried to rearrange the letter and got a single name coming out of it. Izuku Midoriya, Tsukauchi answered, causing everyone who was in the vicinity to be jolted at the mere mention of the name. Aizawa and Nezu turned their head around towards the detective after hearing the name coming out of his mouth. "Congratulations, it took less than a minute to come up with that. As expected from the finest detective of Musudafu. The pride of the police force." Izuku replied, showing a hint of pride in there. "Why are you calling me? Did you hold responsible for Ishido's death?" Tsukauchi asked, wondering if his speculation happens to be true. It took about a full 5 seconds of silence before Izuku gave his answer. "I did." Tsukauchi almost felt like his heart was just being swallowed up to his throat knowing that Izuku was indeed the one that's responsible for it. He heard that he had indeed escaped from prison, but he didn't think that serial killing was gonna be on the top of his list. Why? Tsukauchi only had that question that rings into his mind, wanting to know why he did this. "That's something you should ask my class, isn't it?" Izuku replied, causing Tsukauchi to wonder what he was talking about. "An hour? I gave you 1 hour to learn the truth about my wrong incarceration. Call me when you find out the truth. And if I don't, then I'll tell it to the world, and you won't be liking that," Izuku said before ending the call. Tsukauchi then placed both his hands on the table, feeling overwhelmed, not knowing what just happened. First, he learned that one of the students in Class A was found dead. Then, he just learns that Izuku Midoriya, the former Class A student, is responsible for it. Then, he was told to find out the truth regarding his wrong incarceration and only had an hour before Izuku announced it to the world. He was feeling out of the loop, but even he knows that letting the killer announce something in the media is only bringing unforeseeable catastrophe. Bring the entire class a student to meet me, now. 10 minutes later, after Tsukauchi had told Sanza to bring class A to him, all of them gathered at the meeting room where the UA teacher would hold an important meeting regarding the Izuku Midoriya case that was left 7 months ago. All of the class seemed pretty shaken from the tragedy just now, but Tsukauchi had no moment left to spare. He only got about less than an hour before something bad happened, and he knows that Izuku didn't just call him to alert him. "Okay, I know that you seem pretty shaken up, but I have some questions that I need to ask you all." Sure. Uraraka wiped the tears from her eyes. "Okay, now when was the last time that you saw Ishido out of the mall?" Tsukauchi asked. "We were planning on going to a mall along with the rest of the class. Mina said that she wanted to try a new perfume that she found online, and then she went with Aoyama, and then we decided to go on separate ways." Uraraka went on to explain before she went sobbing again. "We saw Aoyama and Mina went out together while we went to get lunch. Me, Uraraka, and Tsuyu all to get lunch, and after we're done, we head back to the dorm." Momo continued to explain to her. "And did you see Aoyama go together with her?" Tsukauchi asked. "Yes." Momo nods, and Tsukauchi detects no lie coming from it before he turns to Aoyama for an answer. "And did you walk together with Ishido at the time?" "Why, yes. We walked together before she said that she needed to go back to the dorm, so she headed back alone, I think." Aoyama explained. Sukauchi asked, and how long was that? About 10 minutes, sir. Sukauchi nods, confirming that it's true. Now, what can you tell me about Izuku Midoriya? Sukauchi asked, causing the class to go tense at the mere mention of his name. What's this all about? Kirishima questioned. Well, from what I know, Izuku Midoriya is being sent to prison without going to a judge and just being thrown in jail. So from what I know, you all were present at the time and the ones who were certain that he truly was the traitor. Yeah, the damn nerd is indeed the traitor. Katsuki replied with his usual tone. And what makes you so certain that he is the traitor? That damn nerd always muttering every time in class. Always creeping everyone's way. He always writes stuff in that notebook of his, he answers. And did you ever look at the content of those notebooks? Sukauchi pressed on. Yeah, I did, back when he was still little. Katsuki crossed his hand in front of his chest. You were friends with Izuku Midoriya? He asked. I ain't friends with that damn nerd. Now what's this all about? Katsuki slammed his hand on the table, wondering why he was being asked about Izuku Midoriya. I was just asking, young man. So you went to the principal with the notebook that Izuku wrote and told about him being the possible traitor? No, I went to Hobo teacher instead and told him about it, and that damn nerd is the actual traitor. You seem so certain that he truly is. Of course I am. We all are. And you speaking for all of your class. Hell yeah, I am. Did Izuku Midoriya have a criminal record? That damn nerd, please. Did Izuku Midoriya have a criminal relative? No. Did you ever see him make any contact with any villain member? Not I know of. Throughout your time at UA, did you ever see Izuku Midoriya harm someone on purpose? No. Have you ever seen Izuku Midoriya display any villainous behavior during his time at UA or before? No, of course not. So how are you so certain that Izuku Midoriya is indeed the UA traitor if he didn't have any villain relative or made any contact with it, and never had a criminal record in the past 15 years? All the adult starts to realize that the detective has a valid point. The boy had never been in contact with villains, to begin with. Didn't have any criminal record. Never cause a ruckus inside of UA. And 7 months ago, the boy suddenly had the urge to go villain. It doesn't make sense. Either Izuku Midoriya is the greatest actor and manipulative kid they have ever seen, or he was hit with a quirk that makes him go all bad in one night. Why are you asking me this question, to begin with? Deku is the traitor like we've been telling you, and he's escaping from Tartarus a week ago. Should you be out there and patrolling instead of asking this ridiculous question? Katsuki shouted in exasperation. Sukauchi fixed his posture before throwing Katsuki a cold gaze, one that he found intimidating, like he saw when All Might was looking at the group of villains back at USJ. I will when you start telling the truth. All of a sudden, Katsuki's face starts to go pale like a sheet, and not just him but the rest of the class as well. Almost like they just got caught for stealing candy when they were little. You see, I never get to reintroduce myself. Sukauchi starts to rise from his chair and address the group of students. My name is Detective Naomasa Sukauchi. The lead detective of Izuku Midoriya traitor case, along with now the murder of Mina Ishido. And my quirk is called a lie detector. If Katsuki's face weren't white before, now he was turning translucent like a ghost. It's almost like someone is pouring a bucket of ice water on his back. From the moment I came to talk to you, not once what you said is telling the truth. All I heard was nothing but lies coming out of your mouth, and you were easily lying to me, to your teacher, and a bunch of pro-heroes. Without blinking an eye, I'm willing to bet my gun and badge that you framed him to be the traitor of UA because you felt threatened by him, is that right? Sukauchi leans closer to Katsuki's face, but the boy just keeps silent, knowing that he just got caught and busted by everyone including the police. I'll take your silence as a yes. Sukauchi stops with his rants and checks the clock that he still has 7 minutes left. He dials the number to the phone that Izuku gave him and waits till it rings. Izuku picked up the phone and asked, so you finally learned the truth? That your class frames you for being the UA traitor? Sukauchi asked. Put me on speaker. I know that you were with them. And I'll know that the rat and that hobo are there too. Izuku spoke, saying that it wasn't a request. Sukauchi complied and placed the phone on the table before putting it on speaker. So how does it feel, Kachan? Katsuki's face turns in shock hearing his voice coming from the other end of the phone along with the others. Deku. So how does it feel, huh? To know that all of your actions do have consequences. How did you escape? Katsuki growled. 7 months of being in Tartarus after killing one of your classmates, and the first thing that you asked is how did you escape? Wow, guess you are just heartless. Izuku spoke. Is Mina not important to you at all? I meant he was your friend in your little group. Shut it, where are you, so I can kick your fucking ass. And why would I tell you that? Thought you were supposed to be the smart one. After all, you did trick the teacher into putting me behind bars because of a fit of petty jealousy, right? Aizawa-sensei should be there, right? Where is that damn hobo? Izuku asked, finding his new set of attitude to be disturbing because they never heard such disrespect coming from him like that. I'm here, Aizawa spoke in his usual monotone voice. So how does it feel to be walking into the school from now on with your pants down knowing you just killed your former student's dream on the spot? His voice is laced with so much venom and condensation, wondering if he's talking to the same boy he just sent 7 months ago. Have nothing to say. I'm sorry. What good is that gonna do to me? Tsukauchi decides to take over the conversation after watching Aizawa's pained expression. He took the phone back and directed it to him. So now I'm here, I'm back to Japan. Come back to Ua Midoriya. We'll talk this out and get it sorted out, I promise you that. You will have a fair trial and I'll help testify against the charges that were brought to you before. Izuku took a moment before he answered with a dry chuckle, don't make me laugh, detective. I walked into the school and a dozen pro-heroes and police officers will swarm me from every direction and all of your promises will be dismissed by the jury. Tsukauchi bites his lips in silence, knowing that Izuku knows his intention very well. He can't be tricked so easily like that. I'm here just to inform you of what's gonna happen from now on. Everyone suddenly had their attention on him, knowing that this would change things from now on. Since I was being sent to Tartarus because Kachan wants to make a bold statement that he truly is the best in that pitiful school. I thought I decided to do the same with the rest of the class. I intended to put the spotlight on them as well. What? Of course, Mina already has her turn, with her face being posted on every social media platform, in every magazine, in every newspaper, and the Hero Bulletin. Just like what she always wanted, to have the spotlight on her and be taken notice by this society, right, as the pro-hero Pinky. You killed Mina just because you want to make a statement? Jiro asked, looking all flabbergasted. You're sick. Katsuki cursed. Pot meets kettle, Izuku snarked back. You're gonna pay for what you did, Midoriya. You hear me? Kirishima roared in front of the phone before he got pushed back by Sato and Ojiro. Oh Kirishima, I almost forgot that you're there. Izuku's voice then changed with a fake sympathetic tone in him. I know that this must feel so hard, right? Especially after you just confessed to her, about 2 weeks before my incarceration. Does she make you happy? Did you two go steady or have some bumps along the way? Kirishima continued to grunt while trying to pry the phone and pulled out the collar to beat the living snot out of him. Did you know that she called your name before she got decapitated? Izuku asked before switching his tone again. Kiri, help me. Please help me. Kirishima grits his teeth so hard listening to his taunting words, almost wanting to snap that phone in half. The others also felt their stomach turned inside out, knowing that Izuku was mocking Kirishima and the deceased Mina by pretending to mimic her voice. Kiri, listen to me, okay? I love you. Shut your mouth. I'll kill you, Midoriya. I'll kill you for what you did to her. Kirishima exploded, trying to grab the phone and snap it to half even after being pushed by Sato, Tokiyami, Ojiro, and Iida. The girls are all crying after listening to Mina's dying words coming out of Izuku's mouth. Again with the fearmongering attitude, are you parroting Kachan right now? He spoke in a condescending tone once again. You kill her. You kill her, and for what? For SHIGGLES. Isn't that how you treated me before? Why are you so worked up about it? Izuku taunts him, only angers Kirishima on a new set of anger even more. Enough, Midoriya, you know that you won't get away with all of this, right? The heroes are gonna capture you eventually. Tsukauchi speaks. And I'll be there, you quirkless shit. I'll put you in the ground where you belong. Katsuki roared in anger, declaring his words. Good to know. And don't you forget, Kachan, that you never see the bullet that takes you down. Soon Izuku ends the call as the rest of them stand in silence, stewing the new information they just learned. If I had my way with all of you right now, I'd be expelling you all straight away without a second thought and packing you to Tartarus to get picked up. Aizawa looked at all of his students as they lowered their heads down out of shame and regret, one that Aizawa felt that they didn't deserve. After Izuku had finished with the call, Detective Tsukauchi headed back to the police station to find any evidence that could link them to Midoriya's whereabouts, but not before throwing a disgusted look at the rest of the UA staff for their misbehavior of trusting those idiots kids he called his student. After the detective is gone, Aizawa quickly rounded up everyone and they all get a stern lecture from both Aizawa and Principal Nezu himself for manipulating the whole school to send their classmate to a path of villainy. I'm with Sho on this. I think it would be better for all of us if we just expelled these kids straight away and be done with it. Present Mike backs his friend at the argument. That's not fair. Uraraka chimes in. We had evidence. Kirishima interrupted. You saw. Your evidence is nothing but fiction at this point. You set Midoriya on a path of villainy at this moment and you have nothing to blame other than yourself. It's not our fault that Deku is just too weak to be a villain in the first place. Katsuki roared in retaliation when suddenly he got smacked in the head by Aizawa-sensei really hard, causing everyone to look in shock at his action. Katsuki himself looked stunned after getting his head slapped like that. Aizawa-sensei is a lot of things. He likes to threaten his class with expulsion, flaring his quirk for intimidation, and sending his class to detention. But never had they seen Aizawa-sensei getting physical with a student. Even present Mike, who's been friends with him since middle school, also looked surprised. You falsifying evidence to use against the public and sway their opinion just because you want to get rid of him from the perfect little empire you call class. His victim's blood, his next victim's blood, Ishido's blood, they not on his hand, they're on your hands now. Mentioning Mina's name is a low blow for Aizawa to use, but he's already at the peak of his emotion right now. Seeing that his class is still able to act with the higher ground is simply the fact that his class is not the hero he once saw to be. All of you will be in detention for 3 months. Scrubbing the entire school and dorms at night. And after you've finished with your detention, I don't want to see you at my class ever again. What? Find someone willing to teach you, but I'm done with all of you. Leave UA if you want, find another school to accept you, but don't ever come to me for help, cause the way I see it right now, none of you deserve to stay at UA, let alone to be a hero in the first place. Aizawa then took his leave out of the dorm, not wanting to stare at any of his students 1 second longer than he already has. We as the whole teacher will cooperate with the police and pro-heroes in bringing Izuku Midoriya to justice. But once he is captured by the heroes, you all will be expelled by UA and Detective Tsukauchi will be handling your case by the law. The only reason why you're allowed to stay here right now is because if we send you all out of the school and Izuku ends up killing you all, that blood will also be on our hands. Nezu said, finalizing the decision, and the teacher shot a disappointing glare at each one of them before they left the dorm. At the teacher's office, Aizawa sat on the floor with his back behind the wall right next to his desk, placing a hand over to his face while sobbing quietly. He knew that he fucked up. There's no sugarcoating it. 7 months ago, he sent one of his students to prison because of being suspected as a UA traitor. He didn't even bother to call Detective Tsukauchi before or ask for anyone from his underground contact to help get the truth out of him. He just chose the easy way and sent Midoriya to prison under the excuse to keep his class safe. Aizawa can blame Bakugo, Iida, his class, or anyone he wants, but deep down inside, he knew that he was the first to fuck up. He broke his students' trust and now he's out there performing his way of justice, and the first thing that he does is to cut off Ishido's head and send it to his class as a welcoming home gift. He could tell that Ishido was not Midoriya's endgame. The remaining 18 of his class is his endgame. He continued to wallow in sorrow when suddenly the door opened and he didn't look up to check who was in there, only to hear a clapping sound coming from the room. The clapping sound is slow, but by the sound of it, it sounds like it's made to ridicule him. There it is, folks. Nimuri sarcastically clapped her hand, the one who brought justice to our grand institution 7 months ago. Mr. Logic himself, Aizawa Shota, folks, also known as Underground Hero, Eraserhead. Aizawa merely kept his head down and did not use this chance to get back at her. He didn't even bother telling her to stop clapping her hand or stopping her to ridicule him, since he deserved everything that was being thrown at him. He knows what's best for everyone here, folks. He understands what is necessary to keep his students safe, Disregarding feelings and emotion is the key to becoming the hero Eraserhead always envisioned you to be. Nothing but logic and facts, not caring if it's right or wrong. Nimari stopped with his clapping for a while and stood in front of Shota, who was still sitting on the floor not looking up, keeping his head down. She looks down at the underground hero like he's a street beggar begging for a chump change. I told you so. I know, Nimari. I told you that you were in the wrong. But did you listen? No, because I'm Shota and I'm Mr. Always Right and I know what's best for my students by trusting them blindly. You were right, Nimari. I told you so. Yes, you did. Aizawa merely lowered his head, feeling that of all the shit that's happening to his life, this is by far the most guilty he's ever been. Even the feeling of losing Oboro is nothing compared to this. If Oboro could see him right now, he's willing to believe that he would be disappointed with him. But right now, he's feeling like a sack of shit. This is the file of Izuku Midoriya that's been going on since the time of his stay inside the school. Ectoplasm came to deliver the file to the meeting room consisting of Detective Tsukauchi and the rest of the UA staff to learn more about Izuku Midoriya's time at school. As much as Tsukauchi is pissed at all of them for sending the boy to Tartarus, he's willing to put his hatred aside and work together to bring Midoriya to justice. So they work together inside UA since this place is the moment where Midoriya's turning point began. So what do we know about the kid? Tsukauchi asked, deciding to lead the conversation. That he's a brave kid with a good heart. Vlad spoke since he didn't know the kid very much. He's always a kid who seems pretty skittish to me. Power Loader said. His academic alone is good, but if we look at his middle school, he's studying very hard to make up for his lost grade. Smintas looked over to his report card. Let's see, mathematics, modern literature, hero history, heroic class, English. Wow, he's pretty good in English now that I take a good look. Snipe whistles at his report card, looking at the letter A on the subject. Yeah, the kid is pretty good when speaking in English. He even went so far as to study with Nimari for other languages. Mike replied. Aizawa looks over in her direction, remembering that she was an ace in other foreign languages when entering UA. Midoriya tends to come for me to have a private class. He always wanted to learn other foreign languages. He speaks in English, and all the Romance languages. Midnight smirks towards the other teachers, Russian, Spanish, Korean, Mandarin, French, a little bit of Italian. Damn, the kid might as well become a nomad with how much language he can speak. Vlad King looks impressed himself. You have to admit that it's pretty cool. Power Loader chimes. No. Nezu's face turned darker with a grimace. It's worse than we ever thought. Nezu tossed a case file into his desk while wearing an exhausted look, one they find pretty rare when looking at the principal's face. I did some digging at Izuku Midoriya case file and I find one particular note that I never dig a little deeper. And that is, he was in the same school as Katsuki Bakugo. Everyone looked a bit alarmed, knowing that Bakugo wasn't as much of a prized student as they all read it to be before they found out about him at UA. Aizawa took the file from the desk to look at it first since it was his student. Turns out, there was an altercation with his file and his entire school record has been fabricated. Fabricated how? Smintas asked, feeling a sense of dread coming to his spine. Aizawa pulls one of the files and reads it out loud. Katsuki Bakugo is a talented student in both academic and physical. Always lend a helping hand to those around him. Kind to his friends and teachers. A role model to everyone in school. Strong and versatile quirk. A valedictorian of Aldera Junior High. Perfect quirk for heroism. What? Mike asked, wondering if he had a hearing problem with what he just heard. The rest of the staff also had the same bewildered look. Izuku Midoriya is a troublemaker who always seeks attention inside the school. Always getting into a fight with other students. Cheating in class. Disobeying teachers during class. Causing a ruckus in school. Always getting into detention. Had a strong feeling of jealousy to a particular student such as Katsuki Bakugo. Aizawa finished reading the file. Wait, what? Nimari snatched the file from his hand and read it with her own eyes. Both of their files have been doctored, favoring Bakugo to allow him to enter UA and discredit Midoriya at the same time. I suspected that they tampered with his academic score just to downgrade him because they were thinking that quirkless students can't be smarter than quirked students. Wait, quirkless. Nezu took a glance at Aizawa's seat, who had a surprised look since this was the first time he heard it. Didn't you read his file, Aizawa? It was clear that his quirk manifested about a week before the entrance exam had begun. That's why I was putting the kid in your class instead of Vlad, so you could help him regain better control of his new quirk, but it turns out that you disobeyed my order right from the start. I didn't. Aizawa spoke in regret, not knowing that Midoriya is a boy with an entirely new quirk instead of what he suspected, a spoiled kid who could get away by sheer force and skating all the way through school. Well, what a surprise. Nimari throws another jab of insult at him. We misread the sign thinking that was a rivalry, but it turns out it's a case of abuser and victim. We never even bothered to check on the school report and conduct a thorough background check on each student. Nezu said in regret, knowing that he had a hand in this whole matter. That's why he lacked confidence during the first year, because he always felt threatened by the abuser who was sitting in front of him during class, and we never even bothered to punish Bakugo's behavior or even send him to detention, Vlad said in exasperation. And we paired him with the abuser on so many occasions, including the final exam where he was supposed to work together. Aizawa finished the sentence, placed his hand over to his head, and stared at his desk, knowing that he fucked up. Nice. Midnight chimed in with sarcasm in her tone, since right from the start only she and Snipe truly believe he's innocent. But it doesn't make any sense. How is someone born as a late bloomer at the age of 15 in the first place? I never heard such a case before in all my life. Ectoplasm wonders. Most late bloomer case goes only at the age of 7 or 8 sometimes, but never had we seen someone at the age of 15 in the first place. 13 added. Well, I think that Toshinori can answer that question himself. Nezu's head tilts in his direction, causing everyone to look at the skinny skeleton man for explanation. Toshinori glances to his left and right, feeling that all eyes are on him now, and seeing that there's no way that any of them are going to believe the lie that's coming to his mouth, since Principal Nezu was present anyway. He knows that the only way out is to tell them the truth. He owed that to his successor for not believing him in the first place when he was declared the traitor. So Toshinori decides to tell him everything. From the moment he met young Midoriya, saving him from the sludge villain, to how he saves young Bakugo from the same sludge villain that escaped from his grasp. How he offers his quirk called One for All and he accepts it and spends the last 10 months before UA entrance exam to train his boy. How he became a mentor for him and everything. To the point that he asked his successor to return his quirk after he was declared a UA traitor and handed the quirk to young Bakugo. It took about a full half an hour for him to explain everything, and the facial expressions of all the teachers filled with shock and surprise at nothing but a statement for all of them. You idiot. Aizawa snapped the first. This was the angriest Toshinori had ever heard him. Do you not realize that your secret has caused all of us to misread his situation? If I had known. But Toshinori felt a swell of irritation at the other man's words. You would have what? What you would have done? He demanded, suddenly annoyed. You wouldn't have expelled him. He remembered Aizawa's little quirk assessment all too well. He knew the man had been intentionally targeting his boy because of what he had seen at the entrance exam. His boy had pulled through at the last minute, but that didn't make it better. He hears nothing but silence on the other end. Toshinori sighed heavily after confirming it. You would have. I'm worried about young Midoriya being in your class for that very reason, Aizawa. You were willing to expel him with a quirk as strong as his. Do you mean to tell me that you wouldn't have thrown him out of UA if you learned he had previously been quirkless? And your next choice of successor is that dog that you saw as his rival? Midnight shouts, not caring for her lack of mannerism or her highlighted insult. I didn't know at that time. Had I known what young Bakugo did to young Midoriya in the last 10 years before entering UA, I would have never offered him my quirk, let alone allowed him to enter the school. Toshinori tries to defend himself. So the kid is quirkless. Not to sound harsh, but how much trouble is he gonna be for the police to capture him? Vlad King asked, wondering why everyone seemed to jump up. It's not his quirk that makes him dangerous. Aizawa admitted, it's his intelligence and adaptability. What are you talking about? Vlad King asked, since he didn't know much about Izuku himself. His analyst. He's already a good fighter right from the start. We've done quirkless sparring on the first year before a couple of times and he's one of the best. He says as he stands up from the ground, staring at the table. But his analyst is the reason. That's what makes him. He chokes on the word for a moment, scary. If I had to make a description, his martial arts skill is also on par with mine. Aizawa went on to explain, and that was counting out without his private session with Snipe. Wait, snipe. Power Loader turns his attention to the gun hero sitting in front of him. The kid is a natural when it comes to firearms. I once caught him on a gun range practicing with an air pistol and surprise, he hit the bullseye on every target. I thought the kid was funny, so I let him hang around once he told me what happened. Figured it couldn't hurt to have some company while I shot off a couple of rounds, so I gave him some earmuffs and started showing off a little. Kids love that sort of thing. Anyway, eventually he gets the nerve to ask me if he can fire a few shots, and I thought, hell with it, I'm a teacher, it's my area of expertise, and if he's asking me instead of just grabbing it, then he's at least got some head on his shoulders. Kid picks up the gun, listens to my instructions, and you know where that first shot goes. Everyone shrugged, expecting some grand end to this tale, not expecting to see Snipe lean back and bark a laugh up, pointing his finger in a gun manner and aiming it at the wall. He aimed at a small hole center at the practice target paper on each one. 6 bullets are entering the hole perfectly without missing an inch. Snipe spoke with great admiration. Truth be told, had the kid entered the second year, I would have wanted to take him under my wing and offered him an internship to be my sidekick. I probably would have offered him a spot at my agency after graduation. So what you're saying, is that UA had made him into the ultimate quirkless hero who's proficient with firearms and expert in hand-to-hand combat, multilingual in at least 7 different languages, not to mention that he has a high level of intelligence, able to analyze a hero's quirk in less than a minute to figure out their weakness, and he's completely adaptable with fighting and concealment. Ectoplasm mentions each point, trying to grasp the reality of their situation. And we painted him to be the UA traitor, and he's out for blood for his classmate for being pushed to his limits. Power Loader added. The rest of the teacher groans, knowing that they might as well push the kid off to the path of villainy, knowing that this whole mess is started because they blindingly trusted Aizawa's class in the first place. They shouldn't have jumped the gun so quickly. They should have found some way to prove the kid's involvement is true or not. Smooth move, boys. Midnight speaks in sarcasm. Tsukauchi then receives a call from his subordinates and he picks up his phone to listen to the call. The detective then listened to it before his face turned into a dreaded look as everyone saw it, wondering what news the detective heard at the end of the call that managed him to make that kind of face. Okay, thanks. Tsukauchi ends the call before turning his attention to the rest of them. I just got off the phone with my subordinates asking some questions with the head jailer of Tartarus. Turns out, Midoriya does have a few enemies while inside of Tartarus. Enemies. Toshinori took notice of the mention of enemies, which is more than one. The kid is a former student of the prestigious hero school in Japan, and we put him with tons of criminals, you do the math. Tsukauchi quipped. Turns out, the kid always gets into a fight with the other inmates and gets sent into the infirmary 3 times in just the first month. Tsukauchi reported and noticed the discomfort look on the other teachers' faces. Midoriya always gets into the fight until the second month, where someone stood up for the kid and the kid retaliates and fought back with the other inmates instead. So who's this mysterious savior of his? Snipe asked, wondering about the identity. I think you all knew him. Tsukauchi showed the name of the prisoners list of Midoriya's cell wing. And their cell was right next to each other. Everyone looks at the paper consisting of the prisoner's name and inmate number with the number of each prisoner's cell number, and they find Midoriya's name with the number 34 and they recognize his neighbor in the cell 33. Chizome Akaguro, aka the hero killer Stain. Tsukauchi sits inside an interrogation room of Tartarus prison while waiting for the guards to bring one of the inmates to have a conjugal visit with him. The detective seems to act all restless with the situation, especially since he's about to have a live audience, the infamous hero killer himself. He knows that right now, he seems to be at a dead end with the Izuku Midoriya case itself, but now, he seems to at his end, and the only person who could provide him with such information happens to be the man whose they wanted to keep far away from the population. The door is opened and 2 guards come in carrying the infamous hero killer on his prison jumpsuit while his hands and legs are being cuffed. Soon the guard sat him up in the chair and cuffed his legs on the floor and his hands on the table so that he couldn't move away. Once the preparation is finished, the guard decides to leave him to have a private conversation with Tsukauchi. Do I know you? Stain asked, trying to break the silence between them. No, you don't. Tsukauchi spoke in his professional tone. My name is Detective Tsukauchi from the Musudafu Police Department. I'm here to ask you for information about a certain inmate. Stain walks into his seat with a soft chuckle. almost like he figured out the reason why the detective is here to see him. And let me take a wild guess, that same inmate happens to be Izuku Midoriya, correct? Stain replied, causing Tsukauchi to break off from his professional mask. I know why you came here. Now tell me, detective, how does it feel to know that a bunch of brats is a reason why you have a loose killer in the city? Tsukauchi grunts, wondering how he knew about it, and yet the news of Ishido's death is already spreading like wildfire. The guards, they said that you defend the kid on the first week. Care to tell me why you did that? Tsukauchi decides to ask. Not really, to be fair, I only know that the kid is trapped there because of the ruckus created by some inmate here. And you didn't even know that the kid is staying right next to your cell. I never left my cell unless I had things to do. And from what I've heard, the kid also likes to stay in his cell. Until you did. One of the inmates was yelling and shouting while I was trying to get good sleep, so I woke up and decided to give a piece of my mind when suddenly I spotted that kid who got beat up by the inmate. Izuku Midoriya. Stain replied, mentioning Izuku's name, causing Tsukauchi to slightly tense. So I helped the kid, beat up some of the inmates, scare them off, and the kid is away from trouble. Stain said, I asked the kid, wondering why the one I view as a true hero is locked up along with the inmates, and you know what he said. Tsukauchi kept his silence, allowing Stain to continue with the stories. He said that the heroes suspected him to be a traitor, and he suspected that his friends were the ones who planted the evidence. Of course, I was a bit suspicious since I saw one or two of his classmates at the time. But when he starts to tell me about it, explains to me about their behavior the last time he saw them, the more I believe that this kid is framed. And you never bothered to tell the guards about it. Look around you, detective, you think these people will believe a word coming out of us? Tsukauchi knows that deep down he was right. None of the inmates would even bother to believe except for him, who had a lie detector quirk. So I talk with the kid, and he starts to tell me that his life is filled with nothing more but suffering and futility. I didn't talk, just listened to the boy kept rambling and talking about how he started to lose his faith in the heroes with your system. So I offered the kid my assistance. What do you mean assistance? Tsukauchi asked. The kid had a drive. And he starts saying that the first thing he wants to do is to get revenge on his class. I thought that he wanted to expose them for who they are, but it's much more than that. The kid, he wants me to teach him everything I know about fighting. Tsukauchi starts to sweat despite the air conditioner in the room is working perfectly. His sweat starts to drip from his forehead, dreading to know. I was once against it, not liking the fact I had to share my knowledge with some random kid that I happened to like, but then I saw in his eyes the drive, the hatred, the conviction that's deep into his eyes. It's almost like a strong steel waiting to be forged into a weapon. So I grabbed the hammer and started to forge it into a weapon. You expect us to believe that you would teach a 15-year-old kid how to become a cold-blooded vigilante? To teach everything you know about combat and everything. Tsukauchi slammed his desk, refusing to believe it despite his quirk telling that Stain has been telling the truth. Oh, not a vigilante detective. The kid itself is already a natural. Everything that I have learned in all these years, he absorbed like a sponge in almost 6 months. What I taught him at that time, let's just say that I gave him a gold star in assassination. You're mad. Tsukauchi spats. Am I? You're a known detective with a lie detector quirk. Are you telling me that you didn't hear about the bullshit that you heard from your office or the society daily? Society is now filled with too many lies and bullshit. Just like how a child can easily lie to a parent, those fake heroes they called his class can easily lie to their teacher into believing that boy is the actual traitor. Stain counters with a sense of anger. But that doesn't mean I didn't know what I was creating. After all, you ignorant heroes are the main reason why that kid is now on the loose, because of the corrupt foundation that you people have been building on. Stain said, ending the conversation as he started to get up and called the guards to bring him back to his cell, leaving a stunned Tsukauchi on the table. Izuku stood on the rooftop of an agency while admiring the view of the city. He stood tall, wearing a dark green bomber jacket with a black shirt underneath. In his right hand, he carries a metal briefcase before he opens it, showing a Barrett Model 98 Bravo sniper rifle. He took his position on the building and aimed his rifle at an apartment building. Using a thermal image scope, he aims at the apartment building in front of him and uses the thermal function to determine his target on the apartment building before he sees a person coming in from the apartment. He opened his phone, pressed a button call on his phone and returned his eyes to the scope. He watches as the target comes into the kitchen to drop off their belongings, heads to the living room and heads to the telephone before picking it up. Hello. The caller's voice rings through Izuku's ear from his phone and Izuku pulls the trigger. Bang! The shot pierces right through the glass window, hits the target and drops to the floor. Izuku then cleared off the area before he placed his rifle back into the case and walked away from the rooftop, clearing all of the evidence that he was ever there. Katsuki woke up in the dorm looking all tired and battered up, unable to sleep. After their plan gets discovered by that plain-faced detective along with the hobo teacher, all of them aren't allowed to stay in the school any longer since they were such a disgrace according to what that hobo teacher has to say. None of them can enjoy their day as usual as now they were being ostracized by the whole teacher staff. He had no idea if the teachers had already told the whole school or not, but that doesn't change the fact that their life is turned into a pile of shit, all because of that Deku. He pushed himself into walking a second later, intending to go downstairs and find something to eat and see how things would go from here and how things would continue to go from bad to worse for him. As he continued to make his way downstairs, he saw a few of his classmates watching the TV news and allowed himself to see what the topic they were talking about right now. His eyes widened a bit when he saw what it was. HPSC Madam President found dead at her apartment. Her body was found with a bullet hole pierced at her head. What the fuck? Katsuki muttered under his breath, who gets heard by the others who are watching. Shush. Jiro shushed her to keep quiet as they continued to listen to the news. Detective Tsukauchi Naomasa, who is believed to be in charge of the investigation, could not be reached for comment, the reporter announced. This is a disaster. Iida grimaced. Isn't she the lady we saw when Deku was said to be the traitor? Uraraka points to the picture of her face on the television. Quiet, we're trying to listen. Jiro shushed her. Nor has the Musudafu Police Department issued a statement on the matter, but it is believed that this mysterious gunman is responsible for the death of Madam President of the HPSC, as people began to call this mysterious gunman the Ghost Killer. The reporter shows a picture of her before she was found dead. A witness in the area reported seeing the gunman with a green hair on the rooftop resembles Izuku Midoriya, the said traitor of UA. The question under investigation today is, was former UA hero student Izuku Midoriya responsible for her death and the rumored ghost killer? Not wanting to hear the news any longer, Shoto, who's the closest to the remote, turns off the television right away as the rest of the class who's on the first floor watches with grimace in their face. Muted gasps are heard around the room. Katsuki can tell everyone is freaking out, some even seem to be sweating. Everyone seems to be deep in thought for a moment. Questions are probably running through their heads. Guys, isn't she the one who finalizes the paper that Deku is indeed the traitor? Toru asked around. Yeah, I saw him coming out from the principal office at the time. It's definitely her. Iida confirmed. Do you think he's coming? Deku, is he coming for us all? Shiro asked around looking for some form of answer. It's fine, right? Kirishima speaks up. Some take a moment to glance in his direction, and some don't even move. His face is clenched into worry. It's just that Deku, right? He points out, rubbing the back of his head, looking up from the coffee table he was staring at. Yeah, Toru agrees, her clothes shifting slightly, and she seems to be standing up. And he's quirkless. If we ever run into him, wouldn't it be easy to catch him? A beat of silence takes over. Plus, we need to find him right now. We can't allow that useless to blab about our plan before, Sato argues, and a few of them nod in agreement. You all can't be serious. Leaning on the door to the side, Shinso's eyes seem to be burning with rage, the tired, purple eyes narrow. You're underestimating him. He walked over to one of the side chairs. Leaning over it, Jiro jumped at the sudden movement behind her. Shinso, why are you here? Kaminari glances over to see the purple-haired boy walking here unannounced. Thought I came to look around, to see the scum who sold their friend down in the ditch. His face turns into anger, spitting venom on each word. Wait, it's not. You expect me to believe a word you said when Aizawa-sensei had explained everything in full detail. The group fell into silence after hearing the word coming from the purple-haired kid, knowing that their act had already been busted at this point. It's only a matter of time before everyone soon learns of their involvement. The way you act, underestimating him like this, it's gonna get people killed, it's gonna get you killed. Are we though? Jiro speaks up. She's staring off to something on the side, fiddling with her hands, her mouth is pressed in a fine line. She chuckles sadly for a moment. Are we? He is quirkless. It's not like. Her eyes flick back, gazing around the class. He could take on most of us in a fight. The class looked unconvinced. Well, I don't. Iida begins to speak up, but Shinso cuts him off fast. Are you guys that fucking stupid? He scoffs, eyes glaring at the class. They look surprised by his laugh. He lived with you all for 2 fucking goddamn years, how are you guys not scared? Everyone looks around for a moment. He knows everything about you all. Your families, your friends, your relationship, your secrets. He turns to stare at Kaminari and Jiro who are sitting next to each other. He knows your strengths and your weaknesses, what you love and hate, you saw in that notebook you were so afraid of. That damn Deku will die in my hands, you hear me you purple freak. Katsuki roared in anger, shouting at the top of his lungs. Sure, that's why he was able to kill Ishido under your nose and everyone at the mall. Now where were you again at that time? Busy making out with Midoriya's ex-girlfriend. Because we will be safe under the name of a hero called King Explosion Murder. Shinso scoffs, causing Katsuki to jump at him, trying to land a right hook only to get stopped by Sato, who jumps and captures him in a bear hug. Let go of me you big lips, I need to teach that mind freak a lesson. Katsuki grunts, thrashing himself trying to let himself go, but Sato doesn't budge or let go. Yeah, you all who framed him as the traitor in the first place will be the ones who brought him to justice. Good luck. Shinso scoffs at his remark before he slowly walks away, leaving the dorm. Nezu and the rest of the staff gathered at the teacher's office after hearing about the death of the HPSC president. None seemed to have anything to say since they knew what that was all about. This was nothing but a message. Izuku's expulsion letter was being signed not only by Principal Nezu but also by the HPSC to fully terminate Izuku Midoriya's hero license at the time. And now, she's the first one to go other than Ishido. This is a mess, Mike said, his voice lacking his usual power. Understatement of the century. Midnight replied, now the old bat that signed the death of his reputation is buried 6 feet under. I just got off the phone with Tsukauchi, he had his little chat with Stain, and turns out he did teach Midoriya everything there is to it. Midoriya has officially gone rogue. Aizawa announced. Oh my god. Ectoplasm groaned. That's not the worst part, Aizawa replied, withholding certain information left. And what is? Snipe asked. Turns out, a day after Izuku Midoriya escaped Tartarus, a local gun store in Chiba got robbed. Almost a quarter of the store items got robbed, including a particular rifle. Let me guess, Barrett Model 98 Bravo. Snipe guessed. That's correct. How? Aizawa looks around wondering if Snipe had any idea of it. It matches with the ballistic that the police found on her corpse. That's the only rifle that I know in Japan that matches with the bullet. Snipe replied, what else is missing in there? A couple of boxes of ammo for the rifle, half a dozen pistols with all of the clips matches. Body armor, hunting knife, flash grenades, smoke grenades, incendiary grenades, holster for the sidearms, silencers, binoculars, thermal image, nightscope, bear trap, tripwire. Everything he needed to hunt people on day and night or to start a small-scale war. Aizawa replied with an exhausted tone. My boy. Toshinori muttered under his breath, looking all guilty knowing that this was his fault. Had he believed in his successor and stayed by his side, then none of those people would have died. Midnight quickly interjects, so what should we do? We just can't sit around. She comments, looking at the others for help on the matter. Hide the families, hide the UA students, lock down the whole school, go on a whole search for him, Vlad King says, growling. I still don't believe we should be so scared of a quirkless kid. A quirkless kid with Stain training him. Midnight yells out, staring down Vlad. Oh, we don't know that. Vlad counters, so he's a former hero, big deal, we can easily capture him. You're skipping over a huge word there. And what's that? Former. Aizawa spoke up, to which everyone turned to him, former hero. Former UA student. Former one for all user. Out of everyone we ever face, he's probably the most dangerous opponent we ever will face in our careers. Hizashi went to ask, why's that show? The kid is a natural prodigy. He can easily analyze quirks during a fight and find a way to counter them. And from what Tsukauchi said, the kid took the shot to assassinate Madam President from 700 yards away and hit the bullseye to her head. He likes to hide, he likes to hunt. This guy, he's on the offense. Aizawa commented, showing just how serious this turns out to be. A student with a killer mentality that trains under Ua and Hero Killer. This might be the biggest and most dangerous foe that we ever faced. So I suggest that all of you don't underestimate him. We're not underestimating him, but I'm just saying how much trouble is this kid gonna give. Unknown to him, Izuku hears the conversation happening in the office as they speak. In the dark room, Izuku placed a headset over to his ear to listen through the conversation. He slightly chuckled at Vlad King's comment at the fact that he was slightly underestimated, but if he wanted to be honest, he wanted to be underestimated so that it would be much easier to eliminate the rest of the class, but thanks to Eraserhead, now the staff is on full alert. Now, who should I go next? Izuku looks over to the wall and finds the whole wall is covered with pictures of the entire class individually and UA staff with dart holes in every picture. The picture of Mina and Madam President is also on the wall, having a knife on it, and the picture is already crossed. He draws his knife, throws it at the wall and hits at one of the pictures. Guess you're wanna die first, huh?